Macbeth shall be king hereafter.
Full of scorpions is my mind.
What's Taliesin?
Life's but a walking shadow. Honor, love, friends, but in their stead, curses.
Hello and welcome to this video for the Shakespeare text Macbeth. Pause the video now to see how best to use this resource to get the most from it to help your grades. Today we're going to focus on Banquo then, and a little bit on his son Fleance. Banquo comes from a place called Lochaber, which is a little bit to the west of where Macbeth lives in Moray. We're going to look at AO1 and AO2. And here is the hierarchy in Macbeth's time. King Duncan at the top, of course, the nobility or the thanes in the middle there, of which Banquo is one of them. Banquo is a thane, just like Macbeth is. You can't really cover Macbeth without knowing a little bit about the chain of being, and if you don't know what that is, please pause the video now and take a read of the information on the screen. Banquo would rank alongside Macbeth as a noble and a thane. A thane, just to recap, is a chief of a clan who held land from a Scottish king, ranked as an earl's son. Well, we know that Macbeth is a real character, and we know King Duncan certainly existed. But what about Banquo? Well, yes, he was real, but no, he wasn't. In the text, Shakespeare takes his ideas from, there was a Banquo, but he simply helps Macbeth kill Duncan. Not the kind of man that Shakespeare would want to tell King James about. King James, of course, is Banquo's great times 8 grandfather, who committed then treason. So Shakespeare makes him more into a hero in his version. King James and Shakespeare would have believed that Banquo did exist, but in reality he was made up by the Holinstead Chronicles. Shakespeare would have been reading historical records that weren't entirely accurate. Let's take a look at the key themes of Macbeth you could be asked about in the test, and then ask ourselves, where does Banquo fit in? Well, for the theme of fate and free will, we know Banquo breaks free of the witch's spell, so exhibits free will. He's certainly ambitious, just like Macbeth is, and does have, at the beginning of the play at least, the same level of power. But because of his loyalty to Duncan, he doesn't turn that power into lust for ambition. He exhibits many of the gender stereotypes of a male at the time. He is strong, he's a fighter, he's courageous, but he also looks after his son too. We know he too is influenced by the supernatural and the witch's spell, and we know Banquo is a violent man, again just like Macbeth, as he starts the play on the battlefield against the King of Norway. Some key words then to describe Banquo with quotes just underneath. He's disbelieving of the witches and cautious of the spells they make. He doesn't necessarily believe the witches are even real. He's troubled by the effect the spells have on his friend Macbeth. And in a way, he's also tempted by what they tell him. But unlike Macbeth, he doesn't give in to that temptation. He's accused of being... he accuses Macbeth of wanting to kill his son. And you could say he's also very protective of Fleance as well. He tells Fleance to fly, good Fleance, fly, when the murderers come to take his life. What does Shakespeare want us to remember Banquo for? Well, Banquo is the opposite to Macbeth. He isn't tempted by the witches and stays loyal to the crown. Macbeth kills him, but his son becomes king. What does does Shakespeare tell us about Banquo? Well, we have certain words on the right there used to describe him, and many of those words are similar to Macbeth. Shakespeare deliberately makes Banquo and Macbeth almost identical at the start of the play, described by the captain as a fearsome team in battle. They are cannons, overcharged, and proud and brave as eagles. They are both described as having valour, and Duncan admires and appreciates both his captains. Later in the play, Macbeth himself describes Banquo as having wisdom, a trait that sets them on a different journey, and it is Banquo's intellect and rational thinking that mean, unlike Macbeth, he doesn't assume that he should kill a king to get power. What does Banquo represent then in this play? Through Banquo, Shakespeare challenges us to juxtapose Banquo's qualities with Macbeth's, think about the route that Macbeth should have taken, confront the idea that power and ambition doesn't have to corrupt you. The first time we meet Banquo then is in Act 1, Scene 3. The witches tell Macbeth his future, but seemingly ignore Banquo, at least at first. Banquo is worried about his friend and demands to know what his future is. The witches tell him that he'll have kings as children, but he will not be king himself. Banquo doubts how reliable the witches are and wonders if he's going insane. Let's join Macbeth and Banquo then as they meet the witches. Notice how much or little the two characters say and how that changes as you watch the scene.
So foul and fair a day I have not seen.
How far is called to Forres? What are these? So withered, and so wild in their attire that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are aunt. Live you? Or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so.
Speak if you can. What are you?
All hail, Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis.
All hail, Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor.
All hail, Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter.
Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? In the name of truth, are you fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly you show? My noble partner you greet with present grace, and great prediction of noble having and of royal hope that he seems rapt withal. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favours nor your hate.
Hail.
Hail.
Hail. Lesser than Macbeth, and greater.
Not so happy, yet much happier.
Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail, Macbeth and Banquo.
Banquo and Macbeth, all hail.
Stay, you imperfect speakers. Tell me more. By my father's death, I know I'm Thane of Glamis. But how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you have this strange intelligence, and why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Speak! I charge you!
The earth hath bubbles as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished?
Into the air, and what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind. Would that stayed.
Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner?
Your children shall be kings.
You shall be king.
And Thane of Cawdor, too. Went it not so?
To the The self-same tune and words. Who's here?
The king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success.
We are sent to give thee from our royal master. Thanks.
And for an earnest of a greater honour, he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor, in which addition hail most worthy Thane, for it is thine.
What, can the devil speak true? The Thane of Cawdor lives. Why do you dress me in borrowed robes?
Who was the Thane lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears that life which he deserves to lose. Whether he was combined with those of Norway, or did line the rebel with hidden help and vantage, or that with both he laboured in his country's wrack, I know not. But treason's capital, confessed and proved, have overthrown him.
Glamis and Thane of Cawdor. The greatest is behind. Thanks for your pains. Do you not hope your children shall be kings, when those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them?
That trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown, besides the Thane of Cawdor. But 'tis strange. And oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles to betray us in deepest consequence. Cousins, a word, I pray.
2 truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. I thank you, gentlemen. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why has it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise. And nothing is but what is not.
Look, our partner's rapt.
If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me, without my stir.
New honours come upon him, like our strange garments, cleave not to their mould, but with the aid of use.
Come what, come may. Time and the hour runs through the roughest day.
Whether, Macbeth, we stay upon your leisure.
Give me your favour, my dull brain was wrought with things forgotten. Kind gentlemen, your pains are registered where every day I turn the leaf to read them. Let's talk the king. Think upon what hath chanced. At more time, the interim having weighed it, let us speak our free hearts, each to other.
Very gladly.
Till then, enough. Come, friend.
You might have noticed there that Banquo tries to warn Macbeth that although at first the witches seem to be tempting him with wonderful promises, that if he follows the witches, then potentially everything's going to be undone in the future. This again prompts us to think that Banquo is actually a lot more wise than Macbeth is. Now let's look a little closer at some extracts from this scene and the interplay between the two characters. Shakespeare has Macbeth repeat the same language as the witches, which challenges us to see the witches already holding Macbeth under their spell. This implies his belief in witches. The oxymoron here is deliberately confusing foul and fair. Shakespeare has Banquo immediately question how supernatural and demonic the witches are. He emphasises how unidentifiable the witches are and don't conform to the stereotypes of the era. However, Banquo also hints at the witches with his use of alliteration, withered and wild, which imply to us that Banquo too is tempted by the witches' sorcery. Banquo appears to see the witches as old women and nothing more. Shakespeare contrasts Macbeth with Banquo by seemingly have Banquo disbelieve what the witches say, regarding them as fantastical. Shakespeare suggests to us the rational nature of Banquo compared with the more spiritual Macbeth. Banquo is more respectful of the witches, which may suggest where he gets a more hopeful outcome from them. Banquo's questions are curious and suggest to us only mild interest rather than dark ambition. Banquo uses natural imagery here to emphasise he is pure and natural, a direct contrast to the supernatural elements around him. Banquo feels then that if the witches are telling the truth, he'll simply grow like a grain on a cornfield. Banquo uses natural imagery a lot throughout the play to perhaps make really obvious the contrast between himself and Macbeth. Banquo is created by God. He's naturally growing in power as the play develops. Macbeth, on the other hand, is determined to take power through his own hand rather than relying on destiny. A really good pair of quotes then is where Banquo repeats the word rapt to describe Macbeth. Shakespeare uses the word rapt to describe Macbeth. Rapt comes from the Latin word that means if you were seized or kidnapped. The same word came to mean rape. It is as if Macbeth has been kidnapped by the witch's powers, or Macbeth's goodness and noble qualities have been used and raped by the witches as they manage to subdue and corrupt his thoughts. Banquo fears for his friend's safety. The tone here is much more cautious than Macbeth, and his tone immediately challenges us to see he's concerned about Macbeth and Macbeth's reaction to the witches. Banquo appears to invite us to look closer at Macbeth and how he's reacting. Banquo, and of course Shakespeare, is challenging us to begin to judge Macbeth for his actions, as we begin to take on the role as his jury. We sit back in our seats watching the theatre production, and we begin judging when Macbeth is making the right decision, or in fact the wrong one. Shakespeare makes clear the similarities between the two men by using the word partner. The two are equals at this point at the beginning of the play, both in friendship, power, and their role as King Duncan's captains. Let's look at then an extract from further into the scene just after the witches disappear. Shakespeare has Macbeth repeat his natural imagery, but emphasises the spell the witches were using has popped and disappeared. This emphasises Banquo's more rational view of the witches. Shakespeare has Banquo finish the sentence with vanished, implying to us that he no longer thinks of the witches seriously. Shakespeare has Banquo emphasise his disbelief, and almost suggests to us he imagined the situation like a dream, or this is a subtle warning to Macbeth not to take the witches seriously. Shakespeare presents Banquo as repeating the same language as Macbeth. This exaggerates how similar the men are, but is now the point where Macbeth's thoughts turn to murder and Banquo's moral compass proves stronger. Banquo then is able to resist the witches. Now let's look a little closer at this other key quote from Banquo. Have we eaten some insane root that keeps reason prisoner? Shakespeare presents Banquo as seeing Macbeth and himself as a unified force, as they were in battle. Banquo could be perceived as naive here, as he assumes Macbeth is thinking the same as he is. This challenges us to view Banquo as too innocent or pure to see the ambition growing in Macbeth. His tone here is disbelieving. Shakespeare has Banquo immediately think it is poison, as if they are hallucinating. This theme is continued when Macbeth pictures the dagger later. The concrete noun root suggests this is something that will grow and develop, like the ambition in Macbeth. This implies to us something natural that God made rather than man-made. Perhaps it is fate and destiny that Macbeth will kill. Metaphorically, Banquo sees the witch's prophecy as madness. It is a trick that imprisons their sanity. Any intelligent thoughts are held captive by the spell the witches have given. Ironically, Banquo is kept prisoner by Macbeth's ambition. He isn't allowed to develop as a character. He's killed off, of course, before he can. This is a rhetorical question, as Macbeth never answers. He is too full of dark ambition to listen to his friend and his warnings. Banquo is seeking reassurance here, as he thinks it is madness, but Macbeth, possibly due to his wife's sensibilities, believes these weird sisters, itself referring that they are part of Macbeth's own family. Some key quotes then from this scene. The next time we meet Banquo is Act 2, Scene 1. Banquo tells Macbeth as Duncan is grateful for his hospitality. Banquo makes clear he dreamt of the witches, but is not tempted by them. And as soon as Banquo leaves, Macbeth hallucinates a dagger.
How goes the night, boy?
The moon is down. I have not heard the clock.
She goes down at 12.
I take it is later, sir.
No. Take my sword. There's husbandry in heaven. The candles are all out. Take thou that too. A heavy summons lies like lead upon me. Yet I would not sleep. Merciful powers, restrain in me the cursed thoughts that nature gives way to in repose. Give me my sword. Who's that? In front. What, sir? Not yet at rest? The king's abed. Ye have been in unusual pleasure and sent forth great largesse to your offices. Nay more, your wife he greets withal by the name of most kind hostess, and shut up in measureless content.
Being unprepared, our will became the servant to defect, which else should free have wrought.
All's well. I dreamt last night of the three weird sisters. To you they have showed some truth.
I think not of them. Yet, when we can entreat an hour to serve, we'd spend it in some words upon that business. If you would grant the time.
At your kindest leisure.
If you shall cleave to my consent when 'tis, it shall make honor for you.
Oh, so I lose none in seeking to augment it, but still keep my bosom franchised and allegiance clear. I will be counselled.
Good repose the while.
Thanks, sir. The like to you.
Go, bid thy mistress, when my drink is ready, she strike upon the bell. Get you to bed. Is this a dagger which I see before me?
Notice it's like the two are magnets. You've got Banquo trying to tempt Macbeth towards the good side or light, but as soon as Banquo disappears and walks off, Macbeth turns back to the darkness and pictures this dagger. It's like it's a competition, like a tug of war for Macbeth's soul between Banquo and potentially Duncan on one side and these evil, weird sisters on the other, as both try and tempt him towards the light or the dark. When looking at the scene, it's also interesting to look at Banquo's relationship with Fleance. Shakespeare has Banquo be very unaffectionate to Fleance, treating him like a servant. This could imply to us that Fleance is already being brought up like a king, and Banquo is hardening him up. Or is Banquo just jealous of his son and his destiny? This distant relationship is echoed when Fleance calls his father Sir. Shakespeare challenges us to see the moon as a she, implying the romance and caring nature of the moon as light is now gone. This reflects the fact that Banquo appears to be a single father raising his son, a father who is absent as he's always away fighting. Shakespeare deliberately sets the scene at 12 o'clock, the witching hour. Shakespeare has Banquo give his son orders, characterising Fleance as a warrior. He may think Fleance needs to protect himself, or perhaps he's worried that he may kill Duncan himself and can't be tempted by carrying a sword. Shakespeare has Banquo present us with the image that heaven is kept in the dark, which builds on Macbeth's earlier line, "Stars, hide your fires." Shakespeare wants to create an image of darkness so that goodness can't see the crimes that are going to take place. The reference to "candles are all out" is a metaphor for Banquo's own death, a metaphor used later in the play when Lady Macbeth also dies. At this point, it's a good idea to look at Fleance himself. Now, Fleance symbolises hope for the future. Fleance's name even suggests a sheep. He is an innocent boy who remains pure and loyal to his father. It is Fleance who starts the line of kings which leads to King James I. Fleance is another example of Shakespeare trying to please King James. Then we have Macbeth enter, and this interplay between Macbeth and Banquo. This, of course, is loaded with dramatic irony, as Macbeth by this point begins to think about killing the king, and Banquo is trying to persuade him perhaps not to. Shakespeare deliberately presents us with a caring, compassionate Banquo, who respects Macbeth and Duncan and praises both of them. Banquo could be manipulating Macbeth to ensure he feels that Duncan respects him. Shakespeare once again challenges us to see the similarities between the two men. Banquo is thought of what the witches said, but repeats the idea that he cannot or won't believe what was said to him. Does he really think this? Does he simply want to pretend that he never heard the prophecies? Is he saying that to encourage Macbeth to think the same? This at least confronts us with the fact that Banquo too is grappling with his conscience. Shakespeare presents us with the two-faced lies of Macbeth as he uses dramatic irony throughout the scene. He calls Banquo a friend, "I think not of them," referring to the witches, and good repose the while as he asks Banquo to go down and take a nap. We know he is manipulating Banquo to set him at ease while planning on killing the king. Banquo makes clear to Macbeth that he's loyal to the crown, regardless of the witches. This gives us the image of Banquo as a respectable, honourable man. Some key quotes then from this scene. The next time we meet Banquo is Act 3, Scene 1. Banquo suspects Macbeth has killed Duncan. Macbeth tells the audience he fears Banquo and worries that Banquo will betray him. And Macbeth sends murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance. Look closely and you'll find small hints here that Banquo too is under the witch's spell of manipulation. It would be easy to see why Banquo would kill Macbeth because of his suspicions. Look for use of alliteration and words that he used during the earlier scene with the witches. Shakespeare loves repeating the same language by different characters to show who is influencing who.
It now. King, Cawdor, Glamis, all as the weird women promised. And I fear thou playedst most foully for it. Yet it was said it should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings. If there come truth from them, as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine. Why? By the verities on thee made good, may they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope? Hush no more.
Here's our chief guest.
If he had been forgotten,
It had been as a gap in our great feast, and all thing unbecoming.
Tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I request your presence.
Let your highness command upon me. To the which my duties are with a most indissoluble tie for ever knit.
Ride you this afternoon?
Aye, my good lord.
I should have else desired your good advice at this day's council. But we'll take tomorrow. Is it far you ride?
As far, my lord, as will fill up the time twixt now and supper. Go not my horse, the better I must become a borrower of the night for a dark hour or twain.
Fail not our feast.
My lord, I will not.
We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide, filling their hearers with strange invention. But of that tomorrow, when therewithal we shall have course of state, craving us jointly. Hie you to horse. Adieu till you return at night. Goes Fleance with you?
Aye, my good lord. Our time does call upon us.
I wish your horses swift and sure of foot, and so I do commend you to their backs. Farewell.
First then, we have Banquo seemingly talking to himself about how tempted he is by the witches. Shakespeare deliberately presents us with Banquo's thoughts and ideas as he makes clear his concerns about his former friend. The soliloquy makes clear how uncertain Banquo is about his friend, but also suggests how Banquo is hinting that he too is willing to kill a king to get what he wants. Shakespeare deliberately changes Banquo's wording of the witch's weird woman, which implies a growing respect for the witch's powers and perhaps a growing fear of upsetting them. Shakespeare deliberately uses dashes here to imply Banquo's fear at what he's saying, or his growing excitement that he may indeed be father of kings. Shakespeare deliberately uses positive language in the last few lines, but as Banquo tells himself to hush, to quieten his evil thoughts. The opposite of Macbeth, or Banquo knowing that even saying these thoughts out loud is treasonous and against his nature. This challenges us to see Banquo as becoming Macbeth, but also presents us with a man whose moral values are stronger than his ambition. This is a great line to start us off then. Thou hast it now, King, Cawdor, Glamis, all, as the weird women promised, and I fear thou playest most foully for it. Banquo deliberately speaks directly to an absent Macbeth, implying to us that his fears saying implying that he fears saying it's Macbeth in person, despite their former friendship. Shakespeare begins to hint at Banquo's ambitions here, as he says the word all. To Banquo, Macbeth has everything, challenging us to view Banquo as jealous of Macbeth's titles. Shakespeare has Banquo rename the witches weird women, which suggests to us a growing respect and admiration for the witches that may stem from the belief that his prophecies will also come true. It also contrasts with the witches' maturity and Macbeth's immaturity. Shakespeare deliberately repeats the idea that Macbeth is seen as a child playing a game. Lady Macbeth said something similar earlier in the play. It appears that the more powerful Macbeth is, the more immature he's seen by other characters, primarily those who should respect him the most. Shakespeare deliberately uses repeated fricatives, that's the repeated F sound, to make clear his awareness of Macbeth's plans and sly actions. This also repeats the witch's language, implying further that Banquo is under their spell, just like Macbeth is. Shakespeare deliberately presents us with a duplicitous Macbeth, who now symbolises how feelings for Banquo hyperbolizes his feelings for Banquo to fool everyone into thinking they're still close friends. Shakespeare also cleverly hints at Banquo's demise. We know what happens to Macbeth's guests. Duncan was the last person who stayed at his house, remember. Shakespeare has Macbeth's tone and formality changed towards his friend, beginning to command him as he would a servant. This may be to make us dislike Macbeth and Banquo more, and give Banquo more of a motive to fulfil the witch's prophecy. Shakespeare challenges us with a brief exchange of banter between Macbeth and Banquo, which appears friendly on one level, but appears false and scripted. Yet Macbeth's forceful tone and sinister fricatives fail not our feast, imply a darker tone here. The collective pronoun our pits the single Banquo against the might of Macbeth's country and adds weight to the request or threat. There is also irony here, as Banquo does indeed get to the feast, as a ghost of course later in the play. The last formal exchange of pleasantries between the two men appears taunt and forced. Macbeth's final farewell is loaded with resonance. It is the last time he will see his friend, or so he thinks. Banquo is presented us as a loyal servant until the end, emphasising his loyalty and service to the crown to put Macbeth's possible fears at ease. Some key quotes then from this scene. Then we go to Act 3, Scene 3. Banquo dies, and Fleance escapes. This is the first murder we see on stage in the play. Banquo's main concern here is Fleance rather than himself, flattering the watching King James as we see Banquo sacrifice himself for the good of the country.
But who did bid thee join with us?
Macbeth!
He leads not our mistress, since he delivers our offices. All we have to do to the direction just.
Well, stand with us. The west yet glimmers for some streaks a day. Now spurs the lated traveller apace to gain the timely end.
Hark! I hear horses. Then 'tis he. His horses go about!
Almost a mile, but he does, usually. So all men do, from hence to the palace gate, make it their walk.
A light. A light.
'Tis he. Stand to it.
It will be rain tonight.
Let it come down.
Treachery! Fly! Fly! How mayest revenge! Oh, slaves!
Who did strike out the light?
Was not the way.
There's but one down. The sun is fled.
Well, much best half of our affair.
Let's away and see how much is done.
In the original play version, it's hard to see the tragedy and heroism in Banquo's death. It is a bloody and cruel death for such a loyal man and good friend. In newer adaptations, it is easier to see Banquo as a victim of Macbeth's cruelty. Act 3, Scene 4. Macbeth hosts his first royal dinner in honour of King Duncan to celebrate his coronation. Macbeth learns of Banquo's murder, Banquo's ghost arrives, and Macbeth reacts strongly and needs to be calmed down by Lady Macbeth. Macbeth then doubts his sanity. Why is it then Banquo's ghost that appears rather than Duncan's? Shakespeare confronts us with Macbeth's own future, a gory death. Shakespeare challenges us with Macbeth realising that he's committed a sin against a man he loved and respected. Banquo represents the noble and honourable path that Macbeth should have taken. It is much more haunting for Macbeth to realise that Banquo did not need to die. There I've given you then 3 interpretations of why it is Banquo's ghost, not Duncan's, at the scene.
Roofed were the graced person of our Banquo present, who may be rather challenged for unkindness than pity for mischance.
His absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise. Will please your highness grace us with your royal company.
The table's full.
Here's a place reserved, sir.
Well,
Here, my good lord. What is that moves your highness?
which of you have done this?
What, my good lord?
Thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me.
Gentlemen, rise, his highness is not well.
Sit, worthy friends. My lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth. Pray you keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. If much you note him, you will offend him and extend his passion. Are you a man?
I am the bold one that dare look on that which might appall the devil.
Proper stuff, this is of any painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Oh, these flaws and starts. Impostors to true fear would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire authorised by her grandam. Shame itself! Why do you make such faces? When all's done, you look but on a stool.
Behold! Look! How say you? What carry I thou canst not? Speak! Tell! If charnel houses in our graves must send those that we bury back, our monuments shall be the moors of kites.
Quite unmanly and folly.
If I stand here, I saw him!
Fie for shame!
The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die. And there an end, but now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on their crowns and push us from our stools. This is more strange than such a murder is.
My worthy lord, your noble friends do lack you.
I do forget. Do not muse at me. My most worthy friends, I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me. Come, love and health to all. Then I'll sit. Give me some wine. Fill full. I drink to the general joy of the whole table and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss, would he were here. To all and him, we thirst. Avaunt and quit my sight! Let the earth hide thee! Thy bones are mannerless. Thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with.
Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom, 'tis no other. Only it spoils pleasure of the time.
what man I dare approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, the heckin' tiger, take any shape but this, and my poor nerves will never tremble or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword, if trembling I inhabit, then protest with the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow, and real mockery, hence. Being gone, I got. Pray you sit still.
You have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder.
Can such things be and overcome?
Let's look a little bit closer then at Macbeth's reaction to the arrival of Banquo. Shakespeare deliberately juxtaposes Macbeth's friendliness at the meal with his change in tone at Banquo's appearance. Each time Banquo appears, his mask of friendliness shatters. Shakespeare uses sentence length to suggest Macbeth's rapid change of tone from jovial and polite to rude and secretive. Shakespeare deliberately presents us with the lords, who appear to respect and follow Macbeth's rule, repeatedly showing respect to the crown. Shakespeare deliberately challenges us to see Macbeth as purely shocked by the ghost. Macbeth is familiar with deceit and immediately assumes the lords are deceiving him. His language becomes guilty, and the brutality of Banquo's death is made clear with emotive language, gory locks. Shakespeare deliberately repeats the same implications as Act 1, Scene 5, as Lady Macbeth blames sickness for Macbeth's outburst, and yet again questions Macbeth's manhood. Macbeth's response is more assertive this time round. You're now going to see a couple of different productions, how this scene is actually shot. Different directors then do different things with this scene to get different reactions from the lords sat around the table, as well as Macbeth himself.
This is the air-drawn dagger, which you said led you to Duncan. Flaws and starts imposters to true fear would well become a woman's story to Winter's fire, authorised by her grand shame itself. Why do you make such faces when all's done you put on the air?
Breathing. See there. Behold. Look. Lo. How say you? Why, what care I? If thou canst nod, speak too! If charnel houses and our graves must send those we bury back, why then our monuments will be the walls of kites!
Are you quite unmanned in folly?
If I stand here, I saw him.
By the shame!
Blood hath been shed in the olden times. And since 2 murders have been performed, too terrible for the ear. The times have been that when the brains were out, a man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again, with 20 mortal murders on their crowns, and push us from our stools. This is more strange than such a murder is.
My royal lord, your noble friends do lack you.
I do forget. Do not muse at me, my most worthy friends. I have a strange infirmity, which is nothing to those that know me. Now, love and health to all. Then I'll sit down, give me some wine, and quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless. Thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with.
Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom. It is no other. Only spoils the pleasure of the time.
What man dare? I dare. Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, the Hurricane tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves will never tremble. Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword. If trembling I inhabit, then protest me the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence! Being gone, I'm a man again.
Let's take a look then at this second version.
You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last, a hearty welcome.
Thanks to your majesty.
Our hostess keeps her state. Ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host.
Our royal lord, you do not give the cheer.
Sweet remembrancer. I drink to the general joy of the whole table, and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here. Banquo! Now, good digestion, wait on appetite, and health on both.
May it please your highness sit. Please it your highness to grace us with your royal company.
The table's full.
Here is the place reserved, sir.
Where?
Here, my good lord.
Which of you have done this?
What, my good lord?
Thou canst not say I did it.
Never show thy gory locks at me.
Gentlemen, rise. His highness is not well.
Sit, worthy friends. My lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth. Pray you keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. You a man?
Aye, and a bold one that dare look on that which might appall the devil.
What proper stuff? This is the very painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Shame itself. make such faces? When all's done, you look but on a stool.
Prithee, see there! Behold! Look, I say you! Avoid to prick my sight! Let the earth hide thee! Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with. But man dare, I dare. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerve shall never tremble. Hence, horrible shadow! Mockery of mockery, hence!
What? Quite unmanned in folly.
If I stand here, I saw him.
My wishing.
Blood hath been shed ere now, in the olden time. Aye, and since 2 murders have been performed too terrible for the ear. The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again, with 20 mortal gashes on their crowns, and push us from our stools.
You have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder.
Can such things be, and overwhelm us like a summer's cloud without our special want? You make me strange, even to the disposition that I own. And now I think you can behold such sights, and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks, when mine is blanched with fear.
What sights, my lord?
I pray you speak not, he grows worse and worse. Question enrages him at once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once.
Good night, and better health attend his majesty.
Kind good night to all.
Okay, first off we have the first appearance of the first ghost. Macbeth's response is, "Thou canst not say I did it, never shake thy gory locks at me." Macbeth refuses to take the blame for Banquo's murder, yet speaks to a ghost that can't be seen and or heard. The audience may only remember the phrase, "I did it," but this might interpret the outburst as being about Duncan. Macbeth once again gives commands to a supernatural force that's beyond to his power. Macbeth is concerned that Banquo is disagreeing with him. Shakespeare confronts us with a Banquo who's no longer willing to obey Macbeth. Alternatively, Macbeth is physically being sprayed with blood from the shaking of gory locks, once again metaphorically marking him as a murderer and linking to the blood on the murderer's face earlier in the scene. We then have the second appearance, "The time has been, that when brains were out the man would die, and there an end, but now they rise again, 20 mortal murders on their crowns and push us from our stools." Shakespeare uses graphic imagery of battle here, reminding us that Macbeth sees the world in simplistic terms of life and death, a soldier's point of view. The enjambment here suggests, or enjambment here suggests that Macbeth is realizing the hell that awaits him after death. It implies he's once a man who didn't believe in the afterlife, and so was not scared of death. Yet Banquo, a man very much like Macbeth, has proven him wrong. The afterlife and hell does exist. Shakespeare juxtaposes the idea of the crown and royalty with a stool and Macbeth's humble beginnings. This confronts us with the idea the throne will not be enough for Macbeth, but it is but a stool to sit on. This juxtaposition reminds us that Macbeth should not be in power, as he is but a thane. His use of our implies he still thinks of himself as one of the lords, as deep down he's aware that he's not really king. On the second appearance of the ghost then, he also says, "Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold, thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with." Shakespeare repeats blood imagery here to force us to see Macbeth's fear that the dead can come back to life to haunt him. The alliteration, blood, bones, imply Macbeth is dissecting what he's seeing, applying logic to an illogical situation. This attempt to understand what he sees illuminates the conflict Macbeth has always had with the supernatural and the natural. Shakespeare confronts us with the image of Macbeth being judged by a gaze more powerful and godly than his own. Banquo is like an avenging angel reminding and staring at Macbeth's soul. Macbeth shouts the lines, suggesting a lack of control and anger towards Banquo and his own conscience. I dare approach thou like a rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or the Hyrcan tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. Shakespeare uses similes and a list of dangerous, almost mythical animals to describe Macbeth. This foreshadows the confrontation with Macduff at the end of the play and the language Macbeth uses. These present Macbeth as a strong, powerful, yet uncontrolled and wild. Banquo's ghost has stripped him of his complexities and left him more animal than human. Shakespeare confronts us with the image of Macbeth being judged by a gaze more powerful and godly than his own. Banquo is like an avenging angel, reminding and staring at Macbeth's soul. Macbeth admits he is scared and fears only one thing: Banquo's stare from the afterlife. He is affected so much as he knows he is staring at his own guilt and the gory man he's become. Banquo is the image of his own worst crimes. His lack of nerve here is shown by the enjambment after nerves. He is falling apart then at the seams. Of course, this scene is not the last we see of Banquo. You could say that each appearance of Banquo represents a different part of Macbeth's life. The first appearance represents Macbeth's past, a warrior, a friend, and a servant. The second appearance represents Macbeth's present, a killer, a man without goodness or a soul. The third appearance represents his future, Act 4, Scene 1. Now, we know that Banquo comes back when Macbeth goes to visit the witches. The witches conjure up a chain of kings, 8 kings in a line, the last of which is Banquo. The witches show Macbeth a line of 8 kings. This is the number of generations between Fleance and King James I. The last holds a glass, which is a magic ball or mirror. If it is a mirror, it would be used to reflect King James himself, sitting in the audience. And lastly, on comes a smiling Banquo. As we know, ironically, both Banquo and Macbeth's children escape through sacrifice, Lady Macbeth and Banquo's. For a man who has no offspring, the image of children can only fill Macbeth with hatred and loathing. The children who appear in this possession are the children of Fleance. The reflected light in their golden crowns does sear, which means cut into, mine eyeballs, and causes his eyes to jump from their sockets. The climax to Macbeth's reaction occurs in the line, "What, will the line of inheritance stretch out to the crack of doom?" which he finally realises the possibility of an entirely Macbethless future. As we study Banquo then, what does Shakespeare want us to think? Shakespeare presents Banquo as Macbeth's foil. He represents everything Macbeth should have been. He is loyal, royal, and wise. He is ambitious, but knows treason is not the answer, however evil Macbeth might be. He is loyal to the crown and what it represents. He respects power and chain of command, and exhibits all the qualities you would expect from a true King of Scotland. As King James's supposed great ×8 grandfather, Banquo is symbolic of a decent man, but still has human flaws. Now you'll see 3 screens then giving the key quotes for the character with explanations for each. From the outset, Shakespeare presents a close bond between Macbeth and Banquo. As the play develops, we are confronted both by Banquo's honesty and naivety regarding his friend. And as the play develops, we witness what Banquo means to Macbeth. Now we're moving on then to essay skills. There'll be 2 essay questions in the EDUCAS exam. Macbeth is paired with poetry, so timings are really important. 1A will give you an extract, around about 30 lines or so of the play, and will be asked about a character or characters and what you can tell about them in the extract only. This is worth 15 marks and 20 minutes or so of writing. You will then be asked 1B. You'll be asked about a theme or character connected to the extract and how that theme or character develops through the whole play. This is worth 20 marks plus 5 for spelling, which means 40 minutes worth of writing. This is followed, of course, by the poetry questions that will follow a similar format. See the poetry playlist for those. 1A then could look as follows. Look at how Banquo and Macbeth speak here. What does it reveal to an audience about the relationship at this point in the play? Refer closely to details in the extract to support your answer, and as you can see, 15 marks in brackets. The key words are in red. As you can see, we've got 2 characters to talk about, Banquo and Macbeth. It asks, what does it reveal? In other words, what can you tell? And it says the word audience there, reminding us this is a play then, not a book. It asks you to pinpoint their relationship, so how Banquo talks to Macbeth and how Macbeth responds to Banquo. And then it makes clear details from the extract. It wants you to zoom in on particular quotes and particular punctuation choices and particular structural features of the extract itself. 15 marks then tells you how many marks this question's worth. Okay, here's the extract itself then, and as you can see, I've already divided it into 3 pieces. We've got the opening in white, the middle in blue, and the end in green there. I've now begun to highlight the quotes I'd want to look at in more detail, as well as put in bold and red the main quotes I might want to analyse. Let's listen to the scene then as you read it through and begin thinking which quotes you might want to talk about.
Thou hast it now, King, Cawdor, Glamis, all as the weird women promised. And I fear thou playedst most foully for it. Yet it was said, it should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings. If there come truth from them, as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine, why, by the verities on thee made good, may they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope?
Here's our chief guest. If he had been forgotten, it had been as a gap in our great feast and all thing unbecoming.
Tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I'll request your presence.
Let your highness command upon me, to the which my duties are with the most indissoluble tie for ever knit.
Ride you this afternoon?
Aye, my good lord.
We should have else desired your good advice, which still hath been both grave and prosperous in this day's council, but we'll take tomorrow. Is far you ride?
As far, my lord, as 'twill fill up the time twixt this and supper. Go not my horse the better, I must become a borrower of the night for a dark hour or 12.
And fail not our feast.
My lord, I will not.
We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide, filling their hearers with strange invention. But of that, tomorrow, when therewithal we shall have cause of state craving us jointly. Hie you to horse, adieu till you return at night. Goes fleance with you.
Aye, my good lord, our time does call upon us.
I wish your horses swift and sure of foot, and so I do commend you to their backs. Farewell.
This then is how I've written up my beginning of my response there. You'll notice I've got my connectives there and links to the audience in red, and then my quotes in blue. Immediately you'll notice how many quotes there are then and where I've zoomed in on particular words for the most important quotes. I start then with a clear overview of the scene, and this should be given to give a few hints at the deeper knowledge of the characters. The minimum here would be 1 sentence making clear the importance of the scene. After all, you're going to be time pressured, so you've only got enough time really to generate around about 2 sentences. I then start with an introduction to what happens at the start of the extract. I move on to give a range of quotes and what they suggest about the character. With practice, this can be done in a sentence per quote. Then I might look at each part, the beginning, middle and end. There should be an aim to be a key quote that must be analysed. Here there are two. So you can see I'm looking at this case just at the beginning of the extract, and I'm choosing to zoom in on the quote, "I fear you play must foul it for it," and then focus on the word foul being my example of analysis. You'll also notice I've mentioned the word women there particularly as well. The next paragraph must start with a sentence that makes clear how the character or relationship is changing or developing. So that bottom sentence is the beginning of the next paragraph. Let's look at this next section then. You can see I've started bits for you there, but left blank the endings for you to fill in yourselves. This is based then on the middle of the extract. I would start with the extract develops from a lack of trust between the two, becomes more obvious, and we are confronted with Macbeth attempting to manipulate Banquo. You'll notice from that opening bit here that I've written a whole sentence without any quotes. In that sentence, it's really, really important that I show how the relationship or the character has developed since the beginning of the extract. I make very clear to the examiner that I know things are developing, and that's why the examiner's given me the extract in the first place. Shakespeare's Macbeth called Banquo his chief guest, implying. Macbeth uses sibilants, solemn supper, sir, to suggest. His tone is formal when he commands, "I'll request your presence," challenging us too. Banquo's reply is respectful, "Let your highness," commands upon me, which suggest. Then I've zoomed in on the word command. This is my example of analysis then. The word command implies he feels. Then I've gone to the phrase forever knit is metaphorical, which suggests the relationship is. And then the oxymoron grave and prosperous makes us believe Macbeth thinks Banquo is. The examples in black are my quote and then very brief explanation. The examples in in red are those that I'm going to put the most detail into, the ones that I would explain using words like because or as, and the quotes where I'm going to zoom in on particular details. Now, how many of the sentences in black there you can do depends on your timings. It depends how quickly you can write. But the ones in red are really important, particularly this bit here where I use a quote and explain it, and then go on to analyse a word from that quote. That's integral to passing the test. Then, of course, we can look at the end of the extract, and again, some opening sentences there, and then some things to check as you write your response. So by the end of the extract, the relationship has become. Shakespeare repeats Banquo's show of respect to his former friend by calling him my lord to imply to us. And then I go through the rest of the extract looking for quotes I can explain in a sentence, but one key quote that I think I can zoom in on particular details that I think is particularly important at this stage of the extract or the play as a whole. When you're finished, please highlight your quotes, highlight links to reader, highlight links to the writer, and check for technical language. And of course, have you analysed? If you haven't, that might stop you from passing this test. This then is an example of 1B. Now write about how Banquo is presented through the rest of the play, and as you can see it's worth 25 marks, 20 for the reading skills, plus 5 marks for your spelling, punctuation and grammar. Here there's an example of an introduction for this question. As good practice, please pause the video and make notes on this, then try and write the same introduction from memory. Then we can look at the start of the play, making links to the fact Banquo starts as a close friend of Macbeth, he mocks the witches, and he also notices Macbeth is affected by their words. Some great quotes to use listed off there in the blue table below. Please practice brainstorming these and perhaps creating your own response. This then might be how that introduction looks. Notice the quotes are in red, and I've deliberately zoomed in on the word partner here from Look How Our Partner's Wrapped. I've got quite a few quotes there with single word sentences, but my main part of my answer, or main chance of passing the test, comes from this quote here. I can then look at the middle of the play. Banquo no longer trusts Macbeth and fears that he's gained the throne by being deceitful. Macbeth doesn't want to arouse his suspicions. Banquo remains loyal. Macbeth wants both Banquo and his son Flint dead, and Macbeth is willing to murder his closest ally to keep power. Again, excellent quotes underneath there for you to use, and then explain using the notes you've got. And then by the end of the play, the ghost of Banquo haunts Macbeth. Banquo smiles at Macbeth when he's recalled by the witches, and Lady Macbeth is also racked by guilt by Banquo's murder. Again, some really good quotes to use there to help you write a good response. Make sure, though, you analyse one of them. That's then the revision video for Banquo. I really hope you found it useful. And this links to the Shakespeare text, Macbeth.